Welcome everyone. Hare Krishna. Can we make this louder? Does anyone know how? Anyone know the secret? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ooh, it's dead. Uh-oh. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was supposed to record this. We have a problem. It's called dead batteries. Anyone happen to have 2 AA batteries lying around? Or one of these? Battery. No. Is there a store around here? This is not going to last. We could try. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Anyway, we'll see. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we'll do a little kirtan and then we'll have a discussion, answer all your questions, everything you wanted to know, everything you didn't want to know, and everything you should know. Sound good? Can you chant louder? Raise your hand if you're awake. That's what I thought. Only half the people are awake. Okay. So you can chant louder. Krishna, Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Dasakam Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh, wow. Long life. Let's find out how long their life is. So, first thing I would like to say is, nice to be back here after being gone for a few years. We had a good time last time we were here. And maybe it will even be better this time. What do you think? Possible? We're going to be doing some classes and some japa workshop. So you're all invited. And the other thing I was thinking was how unfortunate I was to be born in the family of non-devotees. And you don't have that misfortune. But of course, you don't know what it's like to be born in the family of non-devotees. So you probably take it for granted, right? So you don't realize it. Is that a true assumption? Yes? It's all you know. You don't know anything else. Right? So we know both sides. So when I look at you, I think, oh, you're so fortunate. But I don't know if you think like that. Do you ever think like that? That you're fortunate to be born as a devotee, or you just take it as normal? Or a little of both? Sometimes normal and sometimes fortunate. Well, I will tell you, you're fortunate. And what I would like you to do right now is turn to the devotee next to you, closest to you, and tell them you are fortunate. You're fortunate to be born a devotee, but more fortunate to actually practice and be one. Yeah. So you have a head start, which is good. It doesn't mean you'll take advantage of it, but if you want to take advantage of it, you can. So tonight we thought, whoops, we have batteries, but it looks like these batteries died, no? Krishna. Oh. We came up with some topics we thought would be of interest to you, and then we wanted to let you ask questions also. What time do we end? 8:30. Oh. So we have plenty of time. Okay. So you're going to choose the topics in the order of importance that you think are most important?
Balancing material and spiritual life.
Balancing material and spiritual life. So this is not a topic. Can you make it lower? Just make it a little Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. This is not a topic that only relates to youth. It relates to everyone. We live in a culture whose values is to succeed materially, not to succeed spiritually. You'll find very little, if anyone, talking about spiritual success, and practically everyone talking about material success, right? And how to become materially successful. So there's nothing wrong with material success. The problem is if that overshadows spiritual success, then life becomes more or less a failure. So the problem that most of us face is that the spiritual tends to get pushed in the back, and the material tends to get pushed in the front. It's just the nature of the way society works. Now, if society were Krishna conscious, all your time spent in school would actually help you become more Krishna conscious. So now you might say, well, in school we're very busy. We have to study science and math and geography. And you know the capital cities of every country in the world? Did you study that? Did you? And you study chemistry, science, or you'll study history, sociology, psychology, physiology, biology, right? I know, my daughter's in university. She takes all these classes that take a lot of time and a lot of energy, especially if she's not good in it, then she has to really put time into it. If we were in a Krishna conscious society, it would be different. There would be more of a balance in school between the material and the spiritual. So you know from your own experience how much emphasis is put on the material and how much they make you study, isn't it? And as you get into college, university, more. And then you go out in the workforce, and then you spend 5-6 days, most of your day, at work. And when you're at work, the idea is to move up. Because if you move up, there's more prestige and more money. So everything is kind of filtering, become successful in school so you get a good job. Then once you get a good job, do well so you can move up, gain a better position, better income, more influence. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when all the emphasis is put on that and it overshadows the spiritual, then that's what we call out of balance. Material's here, and this, if you have a scale, the material's here and the spiritual's here for most people. And for some people, spiritual doesn't even exist. There's nothing on that side. There's no weight on that side. That would be the other way, right? It's all material. It's down here, and the spiritual. That's kind of backwards, but that's how the scale works, right? The more you put on one side, the other side goes up. So there's two ways of addressing this. One way is that we have to be able to learn to see Krishna everywhere and everything at all times. Just like you go to school. Most of you are going to school, I assume, or just starting to work, right? So you might say, well, I'm so busy or things are stressful and whatever, I can't think of Krishna. But that's not true, because Krishna is in the heart of every person you meet throughout the day. And Krishna is in the atom and in between the atoms of everything you see. So how could you not see Krishna if you think that way, right? Now atheists, they don't see Krishna anywhere. And a devotee sees Krishna everywhere. And we're looking at the same thing. Sometimes we see somebody becomes angry. We see somebody becomes upset. And so, how do we see Krishna in that? Well, we understand from the teachings of Bhagavad Gita how we're being controlled by the material energy, which we call the three modes of nature, and we can think of Bhagavad Gita. Now, this person got really upset with me today. He was really overcome by tamaguna or rajaguna. He was really being influenced by the situation he was in. We can see this way. We can see ignorance everywhere in how people eat, how people think. So if we look at the world through the eyes of Krishna, the eyes of Scripture, through our philosophy, we can actually see Krishna everywhere. So that's one way we balance our life. Because many people will think, well, if I'm working, if I'm going to school, it's not in relation to Krishna, so I can't think of Krishna, and then We don't even try. We just go there and think this is just my material work or my material education, and there's no Krishna there. But it's not true. Krishna's everywhere, and we just have to learn how to see him everywhere. So that's one point. The other point in balance is we have to balance our spiritual goals, or we should try to balance our spiritual goals with our material goals. Otherwise, the material goals, as I said, will overshadow the spiritual. And then we'll make sacrifices of the spiritual to achieve the material. That's very common. You agree? Okay, I have two things. Should I finish my rounds or should I excel on my football team? Well, I have to practice for the football because the game's tomorrow. So I'll make up my rounds someday. And when someday never comes. So we all know that, we all have that experience. So we're in that environment, we're in that atmosphere, which kind of dictates that kind of thinking. And if we have that kind of thinking, then our lives are out of balance because the spiritual gets neglected. It always gets pushed back. And the material always gets pushed forward. That's just the environment we're in. You have that experience? Yeah. So that's not smart. So then, of course, the other way, because most of you are younger, so you can think, well, I'll do the spiritual when I'm older, when things are easier. But as adults, we have the same problem. There's just, things never get easier. They're always hard. There's always a lot to do. You think you have a lot to do in school. Well, wait till you get a job and have 2 or 3 kids. You'll have more to do. At least now you can sleep at night. When you have little kids, you can't even sleep at night. They'll keep you awake. So it doesn't get easier. So this is a skill we all need to learn. There's always going to be this pressure from the material side, which is going to tell us neglect the spiritual side. Now, you will see as someone becomes more desirous of spiritual progress, spiritual advancement, they don't do that. They'll always give priority to the spiritual. At least they'll give sufficient priority. They won't neglect the material, but they'll give sufficient priority. And they'll do that by making the first part of their day as Krishna conscious as possible. So that's where most young people make a big mistake. They stay up late and they get up late. And the sad part of that is there's no better time of day than early in the morning. It's the most beautiful and the most powerful. And it's an ideal time for doing things with your mind and with your heart. So staying up late, it obviously destroys your chances of getting up early. And if you get up early, it's naturally easy to read Bhagavad Gita or chant, because that part of the day is just, that's the mood that part of the day is in. Right? When you first wake up in the morning, do you feel like turning on a football game or playing loud music? No, you don't. And if you get up very early, the atmosphere is so calm and peaceful. It's just natural to do something spiritual. So I like to say that spiritual life begins early in the morning. And if you miss early in the morning, usually you miss your spiritual life it gets neglected. Yes? You have that experience? If you don't do it in the morning, then you have to go to school or go to work. And then what happens? Then you try to do it later. But when does later come? It usually doesn't. Right? Later never comes. Just remember. If you don't remember anything, at least remember that. What did Mahatma Prabhu say tonight? He said, later never comes. That's all I remember. Okay, that's good enough. Later never comes. Because Krishna created the morning for spiritual life. He created the day for action in the morning and the evening for spiritual life. I was just reading in the 7th canto. In a purport, Prabhupada said one should not work more than 8 hours a day. And the morning and the evening should be dedicated to spiritual life. Isn't that interesting? Like 8 is the limit. Shouldn't work more than 8 hours. Why? Because you have to have time in the morning, you have to have time in the evening for spiritual life. Isn't that interesting? Did you know Prabhupada said that in the Bhagavatam purport? Anybody know that? One should not work more than 8 hours a day. And then Prabhupada said something some of you may know, but it's very interesting. He said that traditionally, maybe 100 years ago, even maybe sooner, in India, and India is, most people live in villages, so the tradition was, people would work all day, and then in the evening they would gather together and someone would recite Ramayana or Mahabharata. Maybe in the morning also. In India, most people go to temples in the morning. So that was the tradition. And you know how that tradition got lost? Anybody know? Television. Television became India's addiction. I was staying in one Indian's home and the television was on 24 hours a day. They just kept it going, like kept them company. It was very weird. Huge addiction. And many of you know that even in the slums, everyone has a television. Did you know that? They don't have any money, but they have a phone and a television. They might not have 3 meals a day, but they have a phone and a television. So the television has changed everything. So that's unfortunate. But that used to be a way of life. That your work, the idea of working was to get enough to live. The idea of working wasn't to become the top this or top that. That's more of a modern invention. The idea in traditional Indian culture, which is, and even in most traditional cultures, which is not that long ago, was you have a skill, you have a trade. Usually it's what your family does, and you inherit it, and you work in that trade, and whatever you make is what you make, and somehow or other you live on that. And so that has completely changed, right? You don't do what your father does. You do what will make the most money. And it doesn't matter if you like it. It doesn't matter if it's your nature. If it makes a lot of money, that's what you should do. That's the modern culture. But the traditional culture was usually you do what your father did. And if he made pots and he had a humble income, you also had a humble income. That's just what you did. And your life was pretty simple. You make your little pots 4 or 5 hours a day, and then you have the rest of the day for your spiritual practice. But if you want to get ahead, you're going to have to work very hard. So, as I said, there's not a problem of getting ahead, but there's a problem of getting ahead to the point where we neglect our spiritual lives. So that's the culture we're in, and that culture has subtly programmed all of us. Whether we realize it or not, we're programmed like that. We're programmed in a way in which people were previously not programmed. If you were a potter and that's what you were trained to do, you would do it. And someone would say to you, you could be a lawyer and you can make more money, and you would say, no, I'm a potter. This is what I do. This is our family business. That's what we do. It's a different culture now, right? And now, if you're a potter, you could be a lawyer. Who's going to respect you if you're a potter, right? He's a potter. He's a loser. He just makes pots, right? And he's a lawyer. Oh, we respect him. So that's what we're dealing with also. Image. And so we don't want these things to handicap our spiritual life or deter us in our spiritual life. Now, there's another interesting thing about balance, because it's not just a question of work and spiritual there's other things. You have to take care of your health. You have a social life. You have recreation. You have different aspects of your life. And so usually, if you put too much energy into one part of your life, another part is minimized. So some people, what they do, in order to be successful in one part of their life, they'll fail in another part of their life. Like they'll neglect their health because they want to put more time into something else. So a lot of people, there's a saying, people work hard all their life, but if they neglect their health, then in the end of life, they have to spend all the money they made on their health because they put so much time into making money, they neglected their health. That's kind of a joke, but it's a sad joke because for many people it's true. So there's an imbalance there. I have my spiritual, have my work, have my family, social life, I have my recreation. And there's so many aspects of life. So here's the saying. The saying is that if you succeed in one area of your life at the cost of failing in another, then you succeed by failing. If I fail here, I'll succeed here. So if I fail in my spiritual, I'll succeed in my material. If I fail in my health, then I can put more time into doing this. Or if I neglect my family, I'll have more time for this. So I fail in one area to succeed in another, which of course is not success. So what actually we're doing is we're succeeding by failing. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing materially. They're succeeding by failing in their spiritual life. Or they're just doing enough spiritual life so that they think, yeah, I'll just do enough so God won't kill me, basically. God won't strike me down with a thunderbolt. Or I'll do enough so that if I've done anything bad, I can clear myself of that karma. You understand? Yeah. So just to summarize, we live in a very materialistic culture, and that has a very strong influence on us. Just like I come back from Mayapur, I was there for 2 months. It's a totally different culture, and all the devotees, when they come there, they become different people. They're much, much different than they are when they're back in their country. Any of you have been to Mayapur, Vrindavan? No, you feel differently, you think differently, your priorities are different. When I'm in, and I see the same people in Mayapur, I see them in the West, and they're different. They don't think the same. It's a different atmosphere here. How many of you have been to Mayapur? So you know what I'm talking about. You're in Mayapur and you think, okay, when I come back to Perth, Maya cannot touch me. And she definitely touches you. It may take a week or 2 or 3, but she gets to you. But while you're in Mayapur, you think, yeah, I can do this. It's because of the atmosphere, the environment. So we're very affected by the environment. And so we should know how the environment affects us so we can deal with it. And in our culture, in our world, we're very affected by material values. All of you, whether you know it or not, have been brainwashed. Not you, all of us have been brainwashed. If you have more, it's better. If it's bigger, it's better. If your title is better, it's better. We've all been brainwashed. If your label is better, it's better. We've all been brainwashed like that. You know, right? If you're Indian, at least in certain Indians, you know what it means to get married. There's so much prestige around marriage. How many people, how much you spend, and like that. So there's pressures. Even you're not conscious of it, you're conscious of it. It can be very subtle. Oh, my daughter's getting married, and we went to our cousin's wedding, and it was in such and such a place, and so many people came. So immediately you think, oh, we have to do the same. Generally, maybe not all of you, but generally, that's how we think. There's prestige, there's peer pressure, there's social pressure to to be on a certain level, to wear certain kinds of clothes and jewelry, to fit in, to be accepted. And we're all being pushed like this. And the unfortunate thing is, if it pushes us to compromise our spiritual life, that's unfortunate. So we have to be aware of that. Is that okay, or you have any question on that topic before we go to the next one? Yes.
I mean, balancing sometimes really becomes difficult. Like what happened this morning is, I'll just say, like exactly, I had to make the breakfast and pack the lunch for the kid, so I skipped my japa.
Yes.
Because my habit is in the morning itself, after shower, finish puja, do the japa, and then do the rest of the stuff.
Yes.
I mean, if I don't do that, it's not possible.
Oh, if you don't make the lunch?
If
you don't make the lunch?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't make the lunch for the kids.
How old are they?
To school,
How old are they?
10 and 17.
Oh, they can make it. Make your lunch. I'm chanting japa. Yeah, tough luck. Learn how to make your lunch. At least make your breakfast. If you give priority to your spiritual practice, Krishna he'll arrange, he'll make it happen. Somehow. You'll figure it out. He'll guide you how to do it, figure it out. If we don't make it priority, then these things will happen. Yes, it's true. I have experience. So, yes. Yes?
So, you say that sometimes because of the material world we try to behave or we try to dress in an appropriate way, in a certain way to fit in.
Yes, yes.
But then, how do you deal with that when it comes to fitting in with ISKCON as well? Like when you're trying to, well, even though you are spiritual and you are moving at your pace, but when it gets attached to a certain level of anxiety that you feel like, okay, I have to be a certain way. It doesn't allow you to go through the process of actually, becoming conscious, and then Krishna conscious, the idea of that. So like, you have a certain kind of pressure, do you know what I mean?
Can you give a specific example?
Like,
to dress a certain way?
No, dressing's fine, but like, just like your japa is like, it has to be 16, like, like when somebody asks you, are you doing 16, and you're like, no, not really. But then you feel the guilt that you're not doing good enough.
Yes.
But then when you start trying to do 16 japas, you're doing it because you have to do 16 to be a good devotee, or you have to be this way to be a good devotee.
Yes.
And that attaches a certain level of anxiety to it, that when I'm doing my japa, it's not that I'm concentrating on japa.
Yes.
I start concentrating on, am I going to be able to finish my 16 rounds?
Yes.
Because that gives me the label of a good devotee.
Yes. Can I repeat that further?
Sorry?
I want to repeat it for the people on Facebook. No, I'm going to repeat it.
Oh, okay.
Because I have the microphone. So. Oh, unless you have a microphone.
No.
Yeah. So she's saying.
It's just something that lots of people, lots of friends of mine, that people that are part of the youth and stuff,
Yes.
they feel this way, like
Feel the pressure to
of course,
come to a standard.
Yeah, but the process of becoming, like smoothly going into that process of being able to do 16 rounds, but then when you are surrounded by a different generation at the same time, so there's a lot of
pressure to conform,
etc. attached to this. So of course we want to be good devotees, we want to chant 16 rounds, but how do we make the process of becoming into this smoother, not like
forced,
not reducing the anxiety or like that attachment to I need to be the label.
So she's saying, how do you transition from feeling pressure to do something that you're not fully ready to do, and not feel ashamed when you're not doing it. So you're caught in between. If you do it, it's artificial because you don't want to, so you just do it to keep the people that are pressuring you from complaining about you, basically, right? Or to look good.
Or to fit in.
To fit in, yeah.
Yeah.
To fit in, look good, or satisfy the people who are pressuring you, which is kind of the same. It's kind of a different way of saying the same thing. And how do you transition so that you actually want to do it, because you know you should, or it would be good if you could. How do you transition into it before you're ready, and so it's not artificial? So, very good question. It's not just for youth that this happens. It happens in reverse for a Westerner, because they'll come in at full speed, and they'll try to do it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then they may end up in the same situation after 7 years and go, wait a minute, this is really hard for me. I don't think I'm evolved enough or advanced enough to be able to maintain this. So maybe I have to do 8 rounds or 4 rounds, or I can't get up early, and so on. The solution, either way, is twofold. Number one, we have to be somewhat self-accepting of the realities of where we're at without condemning ourselves. And this is going to kind of come up in the talk tomorrow night or the next night, like balancing feeling good and bad at the same time. Like, how do you feel inspired if you see that you're not reaching, or you're not doing what you know you should, or what is expected of you? So there's being realistic. Okay, this is where I'm at right now. At the same time, like you say, which is good, there's recognition of where I'd like to be at. And ultimately, there is some combination of being able to have strong willpower and push myself, at the same time being able to do it because I want to. Because I want to may not fully manifest in the beginning, so then you need more willpower. But you may not have the willpower, and it may come gradually through understanding the importance of what you have to do, and also maturing as an individual, not necessarily even maturing spiritually, just maturing as a person to be more responsible or be more aligned with what you want to do. Because when we're immature, we can't even do that materially. We decide to do something materially, and we don't even do it. I'm going to lose weight, change my diet, stop eating late at night, whatever it is, and we don't even do that. So it's not just spiritual, and then we feel guilty about that because we promised ourselves we would go on a diet or whatever. So it may take time for you, or for any of us in this situation, to just process more deeply what is Krishna consciousness, what is our relationship with it, where we're at, what our goals are, what we can chew off now and maintain. And we may have to come to some conclusions that right now, in this stage of my life, this is what I can steadily do. But I know what the goal is, and I want to achieve that goal. And I have to make peace with my current state. So maybe you can do 4 rounds, and you know I can do that every day. And you know you really would like to do 16, but somehow or other this 16, they don't get done all the time, and when they do, you're just doing it because you should do it. And so you have to make peace with that and say, okay, this is where I'm at now. And how can I get out of this so that I can be what I would like to be? And that may take a lot of introspection, more study, more realization of the importance of Krishna consciousness, and then connecting your desire to it. Maybe it's just like there's a disconnect. Maybe there's something you don't understand. Maybe you need to take off from school for a year and spend a year in Mayapur. Maybe you need to go and associate with other devotees that are more evolved. things like that, so that you can accept where you're at and then consider what you need to do to go further. As far as the guilt and shame and all that, it's going to come in two ways. It's going to come from you, and it's going to come from others. And you have to know how to deal with it both ways, because they're different. But a lot of it at times, it first comes from others before it comes from you. And what's coming from you is just what's coming from others. And you don't recognize it's just their voice inside of you. So that's another skill, to be able to hear the voice of others and then understand what you're capable of, and being able to make peace with that and just go, this is what I can do right now. Like, it's not a youth situation, it's everyone's situation. There are many devotees that are not on the level they want to be. And they've they've tried to come to that level, but they failed over and over again. And so they've had to make peace with where they're at and just go, okay. And then work from that platform to get to where they want to go. Shame and guilt only works if it can propel you to go further. It doesn't work if it's so deeply rooted that it makes you feel like giving up. So I actually gave a seminar on guilt. That was a very interesting seminar. And one thing we can recognize is that if you have a standard, as religious movements do, then guilt naturally is something we're all going to have to deal with. If you don't have standards, then there's nothing to be guilty about, because everything's okay. You can go to parties, get drunk, come back late, do this and that. And, well, all the kids do it, so there's no standard, so why would you feel guilty doing what everyone else does? When you have standards and you know those things are wrong, then you'll feel guilty. So we have to know how to process that or deal with that in a way that we can recognize our shortcomings, be somewhat accepting, at the same time remorseful, and desirous of doing better. So you're balancing those things. We'll talk more about that. So it's basically, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to deal with all that pressure, the Krishna conscious social pressure, without it hurting you or disturbing you. And in a way that you can take the good part of it without letting it make you feel, putting you in anxiety, but understanding, what they're saying is good, but I have to be able to process it. So if I chant 16 rounds, I want to chant them properly because I want to, and they're good, not because I'm just like a robot. And so that may take a while till you get to that level. Of course, if you come to my japa workshop, in 2 days you'll get to that level. That was just an ad for my workshop. 2 days you'll come to that level, or your money back. Double your money. The summary of the answer is, it has to come from you. And so your job is, this is your religion, this is your culture, this is your path. So now, if you want to make it real, you have to understand it more deeply. Otherwise, you'll end up like feeling like, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. Chanting japa can be an amazing experience, or it can be a robotic experience. Depends how you understand it. So that's the challenge now for you, to understand your culture more deeply, to understand your philosophy more deeply, so that you actually want to do these things. And you do it because you're inspired to do it, not because you have to. Hare Krishna. Yes? No?
What's a good way to stop other people to have a bad influence on you? Like, sometimes I feel like the kinds around me are like they have have an influence on me, and I'm just really scared that I might just fall down.
Oh, okay. Well, how to avoid the influence of the effect of other people? If they're very influential and strong, and you're very easily influenced, then you probably don't want to be too close to the influencers. Because you can't, it's not like you can do much if you're easily influenced. You want to be around people who will influence you in the way you want to be influenced. So look at it this way. You know what you want to be, and you know the people you associate with are going to make you a certain way, so you want to choose people who will make you, to be with, who will make you the way you want to be. And you know that if you're around people who are not the way you want to be, you'll start becoming like them. So understanding how association works is that we're all influenced by it. Even in more evolved levels of Krishna consciousness, until we're very pure, we're very influenced by our association. And it's more true when you're younger. Because younger you have also the added peer pressure, like, why are you like this? What's wrong with you? You don't have that so much as an adult, although it's there. You just have the general influence of people's language and behavior and thinking. And so when you're around those people, you'll pick it up. So you have to be careful who you allow yourself to be friends with and who you allow yourself to be around, because you'll start talking like them and thinking like them. You have that experience? Yeah. I mean, look at your parents speak with an Indian accent, you speak with an Australian accent, and I speak with an American accent. Why? Because they were around Indians, you're around Australians, and I'm around Americans. If you were around Americans and I was around Australians, I'd be speaking like you and you'd be speaking like me. That just shows the power of influence. So it's like so obvious, we can all see it. But there's so many things like that. The people, the way you speak is because the way the other people in this country speak, but the way you think is also because of the way other people in this country think. So how do you want to think? Well, associate with the people who think like you want to think, and they will influence you. And so nobody should think that we can associate with people and not be affected. We're all affected. Like, you're watching some commercials, you're watching Facebook, it's all affecting you. You're seeing how people dress, it's all affecting you. You're seeing what movie stars and rock stars are wearing, it's affecting you. You want to wear the same thing. How this girl, this famous one, is wearing makeup, how she does her hair. Even if you say it doesn't affect me, it does. It got in there, you saw it. So it's a question of how much it's affecting you. Yes? So then the next question is, well, what if I can't avoid certain association? I think the answer to that question is we have to value what we have, or we have to value our values. We have to see the values that I have are very important. They're very good. The values other people have may not be. So, wow, what happened? Something dropped and the microphone went off. That was called a coincidence. You want to hear something funny? Once in the temple, someone left the temple, and the day they left the temple, all this money was missing. So it's like, yeah, obviously, right? He dropped his phone and this went off. He's got mystic power. Anyway, we found out that someone else took the money, but it just seemed like that person, cause and effect, Krishna. So, Why don't some of you invent a microphone that charges by oxygen? It would help ISKCON. It would help ISKCON and you'd get rich. No, you can invent a battery, the oxygen, because I'm talking into it, and the oxygen will go into the phone. No, carbon monoxide. Battery that will charge with carbon monoxide by speaking into the microphone. Why don't you invent it and just give me 10% of the royalties? It's already been invented?
Economically not viable. Economically it won't be viable, so people won't spend that.
But you'll make it in China, cheap.
Still they won't buy.
But you'll advertise it on television. It'd be the only 2 batteries you ever have to buy for your phone, for your... So, I think it's similar to the answer we just gave. That if you understand what you have and how good it is, then it's a kind of a protection that, do you want to be like these other people? And so, no, I don't want to be like them. So what I have is better. It's like, you're eating nice prasadam, they're eating something, and they say, give me some of your prasadam. No, I'll give you some of mine if you give me some of yours. No, I don't want yours. Mine's better. So you have to see it like that. My life is better. I don't want to be influenced by your life. And then if you take that to a higher level, then at some point you want to be able to influence them when you're stronger or more evolved. That would be better. It's kind of like you'll influence them or they'll influence you. Anything else on this topic? So the next topic?
Connecting study and work to Dharma.
Connecting study and work to Dharma. Yeah. Dharma, one way we can look at Dharma or define it is doing something because it's right, it's the right thing to do. Not necessarily because you want to do it. Like Arjuna didn't want to fight. And Krishna said, well, it's your duty. And he said, yes, but it doesn't look like a good idea, and I just really can't do it. So he's acting more on his feelings. And Krishna said, doesn't matter if you win or lose, which is like, it doesn't matter. Your feelings in this regard are not what's important right now, is what needs to be done is important. And this battle needs to be won by you. So, in the present social climate, as you can see, people doing something because they've committed to it, or doing something because it's the right thing, that's decreasing. You see that with divorce. There's a commitment of a man and a woman, but later on things don't work out. And so it becomes difficult to maintain that commitment out of duty. And they'll say, well, I'm not happy in this relationship. Whereas like your grandparents or great-grandparents, that was never a consideration, whether they're happy or not. The only consideration was they're married, and then that's it. Happy, not happy, good, bad, that they didn't even think. We were staying at the home of one couple. This was in 1990, and she was in her late 70s. And so we spent a lot of time with them in Delhi. And it really didn't look like she and her husband really had much of a relationship. It's kind of like, that kind of 2 people in the same house, friends kind of thing, but not, sometimes they talk and, sometimes they don't, and they don't really do much together. So we were asking her and said, doesn't, like, do you ever like think of divorce? Because it looks like you're like two aliens living together. And she said, yeah, we don't get along. And then she said, but there's no question of divorce. It's just not even considered. That's dharma. It's just, once you committed and this is right, you just do it. So if you're committed to achieve something, then the dharmic part is you do it till you finish it, till you reach it, because it's the right thing. I think in your culture that's pretty strong, dharma, because I see so many of you work hard and steadily, and you're willing to do things you don't like because they need to be done. So it's much more of a Western value than Indian value, as far as I can tell. Of course, India is changing because it's being Westernized, but traditionally Indians are very dutiful, aren't they? They just do it, That's why, like in America, there's so many Indians working in the IT. You go like Microsoft's, like I think 80% or something, because you can rely on them. And if they're needed to work long hours, they'll just do it. They're not going to complain. Americans, it's harder for them. Some, but for many, they're more programmed to, I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do it. So the Dharma is meant to take over when you're in a situation where you just don't feel like doing it, but it has to be done. That's the idea of Dharma. But as far as I can tell, you all do that anyway. It doesn't seem like I need to tell you. Maybe the kids, maybe you're not doing it. I don't know. But that's what it means. In life, you're going to have to do so many things you don't want to do. And what to speak of commitments, now in Kali Yuga it is said the bull is standing on 4 legs and there's only 1 leg left, and that's truthfulness. But that leg is gradually diminishing. And you see that commitments are often broken, easily broken. You promise, but then you don't do it. We even see that in our movement. We have a meeting, everyone says, okay, I'll do this, that, and next week we come to meeting, did you do this? Like half the people didn't. So we take promises quietly. Yeah, I'll come over, I'll see you tomorrow, and I don't come. Why didn't you come? Oh, I forgot. We take commitments lightly. That's more of this, as Kali Yuga progresses, that you'll find more and more of that happening. Whereas older generation, we were told they didn't have contracts, they just shook a hand. Handshake, that's good as a contract. You don't need to sign anything. As people said, people committed, their word was good. Now you have a contract and still people break it. Isn't it? So things have changed. So commitments are important. And when devotees were commit at the time of initiation and they didn't follow their commitment, Prabhupada was very concerned. And he asked, why did you commit if you weren't going to follow? So he was okay, you don't have to commit, but once you commit, then you should follow. And one time, the devotee said, well, Prabhupada, how do we get the determination to follow the 4 regular principles that we committed to follow? And Prabhupada said, you're already committed, so there's no question of asking how to do it. Isn't that an interesting answer? Like if I say, how do I do something? If you asked your wife, if you go home tonight and ask your husband, ask your wife, or your wives ask your husband, how do I remain committed to stay married to you? Can you help me? That would be weird. And they would say, like, what are you talking about? You already committed on the wedding day. So Prabhupada's making the same point. Well, you already committed at initiation, so why are you asking me how to commit? So Prabhupada said, you can't ask that question. You don't have a right to ask the question, because you've already committed. That's the question you ask before you commit. How do I commit? But once you commit, you don't ask the question how, you just commit. So we're losing that ability. And it's being overshadowed by, I don't feel like it. So it's a great virtue to be able to do something you don't feel like doing. It builds strength. And if it's only like, I'll only do this, I won't do that, you become a very weak person. So when devotees were not following their vows, Prabhupada was very upset. And sometimes he said some very heavy things. But he also said, in answer to your question, you don't have to take initiation. That's your choice. But if you choose and then you commit, then you should follow. So you wait till you're ready. Don't do it if you're not. Don't let people force you. Don't feel you have to do it until you're ready. And then when you do it, that means you do it. You're committed. Right? Now we have the problem now. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they fall in love. They're not committed. They just like being with one another. And that's different than being committed. And sometimes they don't know the difference. They think because they like one another, they're committed. What happens when you don't like one another? Haribol. Gauranga. We're going to stop in an hour. We're going to stop in about 50 minutes. You want to go home? Okay. You want to listen? You might learn something. You could become the smartest boy in your school if you listen. You don't want to be? Okay. Second smartest. So, so commitment is, Prabhupada wanted us to take it seriously, so that's part of being dharmic. And we see a lot of people, they're very unstable in their lives. They're not grounded, they can't follow through, so that's not good. And those people fall in love, but they can't stay committed because they fall out of love, and when they're not committed, then they leave. So you fall in love, fall out of love, but stay dharmic and you'll stay together, right? Or you may fall in love with a job and then you don't like your boss, but you can't get another job, so you have to do it. Yes. So there was a god sister I had, and she came to Krishna consciousness with her husband. And I don't know why, but later on they separated and divorced. And she later on, he maybe 10 or 15 years later, he died of cancer. And at that time, she was with another man. And she flew with her first husband when he had cancer to Vrindavan to take care of him, but he only lived like another week, 6-7 days after he arrived. And I was in Vrindavan at the time, and I knew this woman because we lived in the same place for a while. Yeah, we actually lived, We had a preaching center in the city she lived in, so we got to know one another. And after he left, having taken care of him, she began reflecting, and she felt that even though we didn't get along, and even though she was with another man, she kind of became overcome with this mood of dharma, and she said, I should have never left him. That was her reflection. Like, the dharma was a higher pleasure than the relationship. There's another, it's not just you and your wife, but the dharma is surrounding it. There's another thing. So, I may not like my wife may not like me, but there's a pleasure that comes from the commitment to dharma. And she was in her 50s or so, maybe late 50s when he died. And so I got the impression she was just feeling it would have been better if I would have just stuck it out. It would have been better for my spiritual life. Maybe not for my sense gratification, but for my spiritual life. And I would have been more Krishna conscious and felt closer to Prabhupada if I stuck with my Dharma. She didn't say all that, but in her expressions and the emotion of her voice, that's what I picked up. So there is a satisfaction and a strength and a certain kind of pleasure that comes from being dharmic. Even if on the material level it's not happy. It's not like devotees who give up their initiation vows are happy, or people who get divorced are happy, per se. Is that okay? Or any questions on that topic? Yes.
Sometimes when you commit to things, like you said, you're not technically allowed to back out because you're already committed. But your motivation to stay committed and motivation to do things that keep you committed to that, it goes up and down. So what's a way to level it out?
Well, probably one of the best ways is to actually commit to it. Because I think a lot of what happens is we thought we committed. The definition of commitment is there's no way out of this. There's no option. Like when you commit, you actually cut off all the options. That's what you're supposed to do when you commit. So I think a lot of us didn't actually commit, like we left options open. We didn't realize we did. If you want to be successful at something, then we would say you should commit. And why? Because then now there's only one result you're shooting for is to do this, somehow we're going to make it work. For example, let's give the example of marriage in the traditional, not just Indian culture, but any traditional culture where divorce was absent. So, as I understand it, those people are raised to understand you only get married once, and that once you commit, there's no question of anything else. And even if the husband dies young, then the wife puts on white, and she won't remarry. And sometimes you see that in India. She's fairly young when the husband dies, and there's just like, are you going to get remarried? It's not even part of her thinking process because she was committed to her husband, and that's it. That's. So I think maybe the problem is we've redefined commitment as as long as it's good, I'm committed. As long as I'm happy, I'm committed. As long as I feel good, I'm committed. And so then, like Prabhupada said, maybe we should be careful about what we commit to because we're going to let people down. And if we can't follow through, maybe we shouldn't commit. When the movement was young, a lot of young men wanted to take sannyas. They didn't realize how difficult that was going to be. And I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is to be married, Say, well, you like boys, and boys like girls, so let's get married. Yeah, but what you actually realize what it means to be married, it's much more than I like a boy or boy likes me. So part of commitment means to understand also what you're committing to. So you have two things. The concept of commitment, that once you commit, that's it. And what am I actually committing to? Maybe when I know what I'm committing to, I realize actually I can't. Like we find with initiation, some people get initiated and they're not ready. And shortly after, they give it up. So, don't rush it. You don't have to do it now. You have your whole life. Do it when you're ready. I teach a course on commitment, on vows. And that was my realization, that we don't understand what it means to be committed. Another way of saying that is, you give your word, that's it. Like even if you didn't mean it when you said it, but to be committed means, well, I did say it. You said you were going to help. Did I say I was going to help? I don't remember. Does that ever happen to you? You say, yeah, you did say it. Okay, if I said it, then I'll do it. Like that. It's just that's the kind of culture of commitment we need. But we don't live in that culture anymore. And when I teach this course, I ask, right in the beginning, I said, write down all the people you committed to do something that you haven't done. And everybody realizes, oh yeah, I borrowed this book, I told them I was going to bring it back like 6 months ago, I still have it. Oh yeah, and I actually owe $8 to so-and-so. It's kind of embarrassing. But you realize that you lightly make commitments. Yeah, I'll call you back tomorrow. You don't, because you didn't write it down. It wasn't that important. It's not your nature to be that reliable. So we have to, introspect and see these things. Okay? So if you can't commit, don't say it. A lot of times people want to commit, they feel like they'd like to, but they don't have time, and they say they will. So I always tell people, don't tell me you're going to commit. I'd rather you say, I can't do it, than tell me you can and not do it. Because then you let me down. So these are things we can consider. Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm just going for 5 minutes. You come back 2 hours later. Why did you say 5 minutes? Why didn't you just tell me 2 hours? So it's a whole way of thinking, a whole way of being. Now what they also say, which I've experienced to be true, we tend to be more committed to others than to ourselves. So if you want to commit to do something yourself, commit it to somebody else. I want to commit to you that I'll stop eating potato chips at midnight, because I've committed to myself and I've failed miserably. There's also, I was just writing something today about Nike's Just Do It. And a lot of times devotees will say, how do I do this or how do I do that? And sometimes I can help them and give reasons and say, well, if you read more or you chant better, or if you think of good reasons to do it. So sometimes, of course, that's the right answer, but sometimes also the only answer is just do it. Like willpower, determination, intention. And a lot of us are weak in that way. When we were brahmacharis, the program was we would get up by 4 o'clock at the latest and we would take cold showers. And some places were pretty cold. And so the question is, how do you take a cold shower in a cold room when the water's like freezing or just above freezing? And the only answer is, just do it. Because you can't just sit there and go, this is going to be difficult. You just have to do it. So a lot of things in life are like that. They're just like, you can't get mental about it. You just have to do it, even if you don't want to. And it's kind of the nature of commitment. It's like, okay, we're going to do this because I committed to it. And I can't think about it beyond that. Unfortunately, we're losing that capability now. But that's what it means. But again, I would say, especially for us as Kali Yuga progresses, just be careful what you commit to, because it's not so easy. And we tend to take it lightly. Isn't it? I'll finish my rounds tomorrow. Yeah, but you haven't finished your rounds from like 3 weeks ago. So why do you keep putting it off? Yeah. I have some God brothers, and they've committed so deeply that I don't think they can figure out how not to chant 16 rounds. It's like it just happens. They don't know how not to do it, because when you commit deeply, you don't know how not to do what you committed to, because it's gone so deep in your heart. It's so deeply programmed, you just do it. Right? So if you look at that older generation, they don't know how to get divorced. You say, you're totally miserable. Why don't you get divorced? They wouldn't know how to do it. Right? Even if in theory they'd be happier, it's just like they're not programmed for that. So it's kind of like you want to program yourself around what you commit to, so that when you commit, there's a whole body of context and knowledge which empowers that commitment. Like, oh, this is why it's important. This is why we have to make it successful. When I was a young devotee, I really was attracted to renunciation. At least I thought I was. And so I wanted to take sannyas, and I wrote Prabhupada, and he said, first become ideal grihasta, because he could see that I was whimsical. So I said, like, if you can do that, if you can spend 25 years with one woman, okay, you're ready for sannyas. You're ready for anything, if you can do that, you know. Especially he's thinking, like, well, you don't even like your wife. You can spend the next 25 years with her, okay, then you're ready for sannyas, because you've proven yourself. So he wasn't going to let me make that commitment if I hadn't proved that I could even commit to a situation I wasn't happy in, which maybe was not as difficult as being married, not as difficult as being married. So what I realized from teaching about commitment is that it's helpful to commit to little things in order to commit to big things. And if we can't commit to the little, it affects the big commitments, and vice versa. And we take the little commitments lightly, but it affects the big commitments. It's cumulative, right? It's a consciousness. Some of our acharyas have said that if you're in a situation where you can help people, like, let's say, it's really cold and there's some homeless guy, and you have like 10 jackets, and you don't need the one you're wearing, you just give it to him. Why not? You can do that. And so the Acharya said, it's not part of bhakti, but it's a compassionate act, and that act of compassion will create a proper mentality for bhakti to grow. So why not do it? And if you can do it and you don't, it makes your heart hard, and that's not good for bhakti. So giving a jacket or not, that you could just consider that karma or piety, but it can have an effect on your consciousness. Because if you could have done it and you don't, right? Or he's poor and you have like extra pakoras or samosas, you don't need to eat them, or you can buy more and you give it to him. That helps you develop that compassionate muscle, and committing helps you develop the commitment muscle. So if you're challenged by some difficulty, it's good to, I committed to this, but it's hard and I don't have time. Just stay up late and do it. It's good for you, because you're practicing commitment. And the next time you have to commit, it'll be easier because you did this, and it'll be harder if you didn't. Is that okay? Anything else on this topic? How many more topics we have? One more.
It's actually Prabhupada's teachings on initiation and marriage.
What are his teachings on initiation and marriage? He gave up on marriage. There were so many divorces. He said, don't ask me. I guess it's just an extension of the topic we're having. If you're not married, you don't know this, and if you are married, you know this, that being married is not easy. And so it's a commitment, and Prabhupada wanted us to be exemplary to society, so if our marriages are not exemplary, that's not good. And I think also it's important to know that society has changed, and although we study ideal marriages from the Bhagavatam, and the principles are there of how husbands and wives should be, to expect that our husbands or wives would exactly be like that is not always realistic, and that can create problems in marriage when we're expecting, like the husband's expected his wife to be like Devotee, and she's expecting him to be like Kardama. I don't think there's any Kardama husbands around. I mean, I haven't seen any who can create a whole city on an airplane, or do tapasya for so many years in the forest. And how many women would go out with their husbands and live in the forest and do tapasya? So I think one of the challenges we have is we have to take what's in Shastra and figure out how that applies within a context which may be much different, right? And how much we can duplicate that, and how much we shouldn't try to duplicate, which would create problems in trying to duplicate it because we can't. So, what I know that Prabhupada wanted from marriage was the couples be happy and they stay together. And I've seen a lot of unhappy couples and a lot of divorces. They weren't able to do it. Those are the two things Prabhupada wanted: be happy together and stay together. So that sounds easy, right? It's not easy at all. How do you stay together if you're not happy? That's difficult. Yeah. I think one of the problems is thinking that marriage alone will make me happy, when it's Krishna consciousness that will make me happy. And if you and your husband, or you and your wife together can become Krishna conscious, you'll definitely be happy. Even if you don't like one another that much, but if the combination makes you Krishna consciousness makes you happy. I've seen some couples, they're really good devotees, they don't get along so well, but they're really good devotees, so they're happy. They have Mangal Artik every day at their house, and they have preaching programs, and they're always fighting, and she's trying to control, and he's trying to control. But because there's so much Krishna consciousness in the family, I can see they're happy, because their happiness is not coming so much from the relationship per se, it's coming from the relationship because they're serving together and they're making advancement. So that's also important to understand. There's that element, There's no, it's hard to find a perfect relationship. And karmically, not all of us have good family karma. We're not all destined to, have a heavenly family life, karmically. But at least if we're Krishna conscious, or at least if together the husband and wife are Krishna conscious, and we're progressing, we'll be happy. Maybe not materially so happy, but spiritually we'll be happy. What was the other one? Marriage and initiation. The dichotomy of initiation is that everyone should get initiated, but no one should get initiated who's not ready. So that means everyone should be ready, try to become ready for initiation, and not get initiated until you're ready. Now, you might say, well, I'm busy and I'm moving slowly in my spiritual life, so I will get initiated when I retire at 65. The only problem is you may not be alive at 65 to get initiated. So that's why there's a push. Do it now, do it when you're young. You make this connection, you make this commitment. That's true. But why do it if you can't keep it? Then it's like, in a sense, worse. Why make a promise to your guru, to the Vaishnavas, to the deities, if you're not going to make it? So, and you don't need to be initiated to have a guru. You can have a 6-year guru. So don't think, well, in order to get a guru, I have to be initiated. No, so many people can be your guru. And maybe you're not going to get initiated soon, or even in this life, but you can still take guidance, and of course Prabhupada's there, and we all take shelter of him. And there was even a man who wasn't initiated. For some reason, he didn't want to get initiated, or didn't feel he was qualified, and Prabhupada said, Krishna will take you back to Godhead. Everyone was telling him, you should get initiated. And he said, Prabhupada, I don't feel ready or qualified. Prabhupada said, Krishna's going to take you back to Godhead, because he was doing so much service. So, generally, the Shastras will say that taking shelter of a guru is most important, and then eventually getting initiated. These things are essentially important. To this man, Prabhupada, he was serving Prabhupada. He wasn't initiated, but I think Prabhupada just accepted him like a disciple and said, you'll go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada can do that also. No doubt. So that doesn't mean, oh, okay, Mahaprabhu said I don't have to get initiated because Prabhupada will take me back to Godhead. Well, I did say that, but I didn't say that. But I just said if you're not ready, don't do it, and he could intervene. He's that, but we don't count on it, right? It's a balance. Why do something you're not ready to do and you can't do? Doesn't make sense. But you should aspire for it. Everyone should aspire. Take shelter of Prabhupada, aspire to have a guru, serve him, take instruction from him, and someday take initiation. When you're ready. To chant 16 rounds and follow 4 regular principles your whole life is no simple task. Is it? So, when you do it, be ready to do it. You know, now you want to chant 16 rounds, but you're not committed. So, you know, today you chant 12, tomorrow 10, the next day 18. It's okay, you're not initiated. But once you get initiated, you have to do it every day, even when you're tired, you don't feel good. You have to do it. So it's, you know, it's different. Was there something about low self-esteem? Was that part of the...
Building self-esteem.
No. There's transcendental self-esteem. And there's material self-esteem. Transcendental self-esteem means Krishna is powerful. And Krishna can do so many things through you. But the part of the problem I see with the lack of self-esteem is what we were talking about initially, that the pressures of society cause us to be very concerned about image. You know, what do people think of me? What if I'm driving this old car? What will they think of me? What if I live in this neighborhood? What will they think of me? And so forth. And you can start to think something's wrong with you if you haven't achieved those things, because society is telling you something's wrong with you if you haven't achieved them. And so I think a lot of people lack self-esteem just because of social pressure. They're being evaluated by social standards, and there's nothing wrong with them. Everything's fine. They just don't think everything's fine because they've been told, look you're 2 kgs overweight. Something's definitely wrong with you. Then you feel bad, right? Well, 100 years ago, you'd be considered skinny. Now you're considered fat. 100 years ago in India, if you were skinny, you were considered ugly. If you were fat, you were considered wealthy. So fat was equated with wealth, because if you had wealth, you could eat ghee and rich food and you'd get fat. So isn't that interesting? So fat people were considered attractive, and that's why in the old Hindi movies all the actresses are little chubby, isn't it? And now they're thin because it's a different standard. So if you're chubby, go back in a time machine, you'll be totally in style and your self-esteem will rise. And if you're thin, live in 2019 and you'll have high self-esteem. So, you know, that doesn't make any sense, but that's what's happening. Isn't it? Here's a funny story you may not know, but there was always in society a group of peasants, and peasants did the farming, they did the work, the labor. And so the peasants were outdoors, and if you have white skin, if you're European or American and you have light skin, if you work outdoors, your skin gets dark. So we start looking like we're Indians. You look like you have a built-in tan. And you want to get whiter, and we want to get darker. So we want to look like you, and you want to look like us. And I can explain the reason. Well, initially, these people who were working outdoors, they got very dark. So dark skin was equated with peasants. So having a suntan was not desirable. Then there was one lady who later developed her cosmetic line. One of those ladies, I don't know her name. And she was on her yacht traveling somewhere, and she got a suntan. And then the suntan became the sign of beauty, so the dark skin. So then all the white people started going out and sunbathing to get a tan, because now a tan was considered or equated with the wealthy, whereas previously it was equated with the peasants. So in one era, if you had a tan, people would look down on you, and another decade, if you had a tan, they'd think you're beautiful, and they'd appreciate you. Isn't that funny? So in one decade, the tan person has low self-esteem, and one decade, the tan person has high self. So it's like, we have to look at these things because they're just contextual within a social environment. And so we want to be a little more stable than that, right? I mean, there is a sense that we shouldn't care so much about what other people think of us, because it's not our business what they think of us. Our business is to be what is good, what is right, and if we're doing that, then we should be happy with ourselves. The other aspect of low self-esteem relates to humility, in the sense that if someone has low self-esteem, they may need other people to appreciate and honor them in order that they feel good about themselves. And that's a difficult way to live, because not everybody's going to appreciate you. And if I have low self-esteem, I need you to tell me I'm good, because I don't think I am. And if you tell me I'm good, then I'll feel good today. If you don't tell me I'm good, I won't feel good, because I don't think I am good. So I need all of you to tell me I'm good. So let's say after the class, nobody tells me I'm good. Now I hate all of you. It's like, you sat here for like 2 hours, and I sacrificed 2 hours, and I gave you such good information, and nobody said anything. So if I have good self-esteem, I don't even think about it, because I don't need it. If I have low self-esteem, then I get upset with you. I'm not coming back to Perth. They don't appreciate me, because I need appreciation to feel normal. So that's the liability that low self-esteem causes. And you can really disturb relationships, because you're depending on people to give you your fix of recognition and significance and appreciation. And most people don't normally do that. Most people don't go around telling everybody how great they are. Most people go around waiting to be told how great they are, not telling people how great they are. But the interesting thing is, if you tell people how great they are, oftentimes it fulfills your need to be recognized. You just feel satisfied. It's kind of mystical. Some devotees say, if they cook for the deities, when they finish cooking, they're not hungry. It's just, it's one of those things that sometimes you give, you get back what you give. So you honor someone, you appreciate someone, and all of a sudden you feel satisfied with yourself. So I would say if you have low self-esteem, it's very helpful to be appreciative of others. It can help you a lot. And then there's another aspect of low self-esteem in which someone thinks that they're not lovable, and if you come to spiritual life, then you might think, God doesn't love me, or why would he love me? And of course, our philosophy is that Krishna is all merciful, and He's always wanting us back and always trying to help us. So obviously, he shows that he loves us. Mahaprabhu comes, give love of God, take us out of the material world. So it's kind of strange if somebody thinks God doesn't love me when there's evidence, so much evidence that he does. Isn't it? So that's unfortunate. If someone thinks Krishna doesn't love me, there's all the evidence that he does. Why would he come as Mahaprabhu if he didn't love you? Why would he send Prabhupada? Why would Prabhupada come to the West? Why would all these things happen if Krishna didn't love us? Right? So that's unfortunate if we have low self-esteem, because then we can't see how much Krishna loves us. So you might say, I'm not worthy of his love. Well, that's true. None of us are. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love us. Are you worthy of your mother's love, your father's love? Have you done anything nasty to them? Yeah. Do they still love you? Yeah. So, Krishna is the Father, so we may not deserve his love, but he loves us anyway. And so, if we have healthy self-esteem, we'll just accept his love. If we have low self-esteem, we'll think, why would he love me? Right? Why would Krishna love me? I'm so sinful, I'm so bad. Well, you don't have to try to figure out why he'd love you. He just does. Even if you don't even love yourself, he loves you. So if you don't love yourself and he loves you, you should love yourself. Because if it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for you. If you're good enough for him, then you should be good enough for yourself. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Hare Krishna. So, anything else? Anything less? Anything more? Did you see that little pouch with the USB sticks in it? Yeah, okay. So we have some things on the table here. They'll be here all weekend. I have 2 books. One is called Uplift Yourself, Change the World, and it's a book of quotes of my realizations and understandings about, I think, 39 different topics. So it's divided by topic with quotes under each topic. And that's also available on Kindle on Amazon. Then we just came out with a book on japa. It's called Japa Affirmations, and there are 20 affirmations and explanations which are meant to create the proper mood and attitude and feeling when you chant japa, to upgrade your japa, to empower your japa. So that book has been helping a lot of devotees with their japa. Then I put all my music on a USB stick, and that is probably up to like 30 or 40 hours of music. And we've added all of Prabhupada's music, which is 40 hours of music. So that's a lot of music. And that's 35. The Uplift Yourself is 10. The Japa book is 8. That USB stick is 35, which is about what, if you bought just Prabhupada's music, that's what it would cost. And then I have another stick. It's gold, and it has 34 workshops. And whatever on the sticks is listed there. We have. Did you put those out? Yeah. So you can see what's on the sticks. And the stick with the 34 workshops, it's about close to 700 hours of workshops. And it also has some of my CDs, some of my music. So that's available for $50. Is that okay? So, thank you for coming. And tomorrow night we have another program here at beginning at what time? 7? And what's the topic tomorrow? Who knows? I think it's, what is it? Balancing feeling good and bad? Is that it? So the topic tomorrow is how we deal with our own lackings, our own anarthas, the need to be aware of them, to introspect, to be humble, and then how not to allow that to cause us to become discouraged or even depressed when we see all our faults, and how we can actually feel good when we see those faults, how we can use that to empower us. Or as we say, feeling good about feeling bad. How feeling bad can be empowering. Introspection is meant to be empowering. And we can also talk about how to introspect, how to know where we need to improve, what's wrong with us. Sometimes we don't even know. And then the next night, it is called what? Be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. And then Saturday, Sunday, we have the japa workshop. Now, I just wanted to say something about japa. And this is going to sound challenging, but it's meant to sound challenging. Can I challenge you? Some people, when they find out we're having a japa workshop, it's all day Saturday and most of the day Sunday, they think that's too much. I don't have time. So this is what I have to say to you. If you don't have time to improve your japa, then you don't deserve to improve it. I mean, think about that. I don't have time to improve my japa. Like, that's an amazing statement. That's too long. I don't have time to improve. Okay, you don't have time to improve your japa. That's fine. So let your japa stay the way it is. If you're happy with it the way it is, fine. If you're not happy with the way it is, then if you're not willing to put the time into improving it, then why do you think it should just get better? How is it going to get better? If you're not willing to put the energy into it, then I would say you don't deserve. You have to put energy. You have to put time. You might say, yeah, I'm put time and energy, but a japa workshop is very focused, and it can be extremely beneficial and powerful. So to put a few days into improving your japa, definitely your japa is worth that much time. It's worth more time. Normally retreats, we do japa retreats for 5 days at great expense, and we travel somewhere, and this is only 2 days. So if it's at all possible you can come, it will definitely be worth it. And if, consider if you're really saying, I think it's too much time, I'm not willing to put that time in. Kind of reframe that and say, I'm not willing to put in time to improving my japa. That doesn't sound right, does it? Yeah. So if you're willing to put in the time in, that's a sign that you want to improve, and Krishna will see that and he'll help you. Is that okay? So you can think about it. It's 10 to 6, is that right? 10 to 4, it's only 10 to 4. Most temples, it's Friday night for 2 to 3 hours, 10 to 6 Saturday, and 10 to 6 Sunday. This is no Friday night, and it's only 10 to 4 both days, so it's not much. And we take lunch, so there's really like 5 hours a day. That's like, I was telling.
Maharaj, can you just advise the kids like how to focus and concentrate?
Yeah, turn off your phones, and then they'll solve the problem. Phone's not on before 9, after 7, turn them off. And look at them as little as possible. Because if you don't learn how to control your phone will control your life, and you'll be completely distracted the rest of your life. You won't even know how to talk to people anymore, because you'll just be chatting. Yeah, it's so destructive. That message is for everybody. If your phone doesn't need to be on, just turn it off, and don't turn it on in the morning. It's not that important. From what I see, looking over the shoulders of people, like on the airplane, hi, just arrived, just got in, how's it going? It's like, how much of what they're doing on their phone is actually necessary? Like, absolutely necessary. I don't know if you realized it, but there was a time when there were no mobile phones. People actually went out without phones. Can you believe it? It's hard to believe, right? People would actually go out. You know, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I'd go out in the morning on my bike with my friends at like 9, 10 o'clock and come back at 6 at night, and my parents had no way of getting in touch with me. I kind of told them I'm going here, and they go, okay, we'll see you later. And be gone all day, no phone, nothing. Can you imagine living like that? And if you had to make a call, there was a telephone booth, which we never did. So there was also a time there was no internet. People actually went to libraries to learn things. Can you imagine how troublesome that must have been? You have to go walk to a library or ride your bike to a library or get in a car, go to a library to learn something. So the world did exist before there were phones, somehow or other. So that's a huge distraction.
Those periods are very peaceful compared with this period.
What's that?
Those periods are very
Oh yeah, those periods are very peaceful, yeah. Yeah, you want to be peaceful, yeah. Just keep your phone off as much as possible. Because it's an intrusion into something you need to focus on. Yeah, there was a funny story I read. This older man, he never used phones, and he was invited to a company to give a talk, he was some kind of business consultant. So when he came in, everybody was on their phone, doing this and that. And he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm responding to messages, making appointments, answering emails." And he said, "That's what my secretary does. I don't do that stuff." So we've all become our own secretaries now. In traditional business, secretaries would answer the phone. So the boss could, and she'd call him. And if he was busy, he would say, "I'm busy." Just get the messages. Right? Anyway, the less you use your phone, the less distracted you'll be. So, something to consider. And if you can't do that, you know what it means? You're addicted. You have an actual addiction to your phone. If you can't put your phone down for 24 hours, if you can't keep your phone off for 24 hours, you actually have an addiction to it, and you have, your brain is wired the way drug addicts' brains are wired. Did you know that? It's the same wiring, because it's the same addiction. And when you get a message, it's like it feeds that addiction. When you get a like, it feeds that addiction. It's crazy. The whole world's becoming addicted to phones, like a drug. It's become a drug. I need my likes. Send another message. Maybe I'll get more likes. It's crazy. What I told my daughter when she was young, I said, you should learn to chant when you're young, because the earlier you learn, the easier it will be when you're an adult. And the more you procrastinate on it, the harder it's going to be when you actually want to do it when you're an adult. So, you know what my philosophy is? Every year of age, 1 round. So by the time you're 16, you're at 16 rounds, no problem. You know, you're 4 rounds. 8 rounds. Why not? Oh, I can't do that. No, you don't want to do it, but you can do it. So when you say I can't, just understand it means I don't want to. Doesn't mean I can't. I mean, if you say I can't jump to the moon, okay, I agree, you can't. It's not that you don't want to. But when you say, I can't get up early, I can't read this, I can't chant that, no, it just means you don't want to. And it's so good for you, you should want to. Stand out from the crowd. Chant Hare Krishna. Be special. Be different. Challenge the status quo. Chant Hare Krishna. That's how we should look at it. Okay? All right, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura, Gaura, Gaura.